My sister had her friends attack me and lied straight to our dad's face about it. When I finally opened up, he sighed softly and said, "Your sister loves you. She wouldn't do that. Yesterday, she framed him for the abuse, and he's now in trouble with the law. Growing up, there was just one rule, to never hit a woman. Obviously, it was something I never even struggled with, until my 12th birthday. You see, my older sister used to beat my A on the regular. One time I had a really bad dream, and my parents' bedroom door was locked, so I slept outside hers, because even just knowing I was near my big sis was comforting. But unfortunately, she woke up before me, and beat me up so bad that I ended up going to school with bruises all over me. Her reasoning? For blocking her doorway. And when I turned 12, I started to get sick of it. It all started when I accidentally fell down the stairs. It was late at night, so my thumping woke her up, and instead of helping me up or even just ignoring me, she stomped down the stairs and kicked the back of my legs. But I was ready. I grabbed her leg and pinched it super hard, except my little act of revenge didn't feel as good as I thought it would. In fact, it made me feel worse. So much so that I started crying for being such a terrible brother, and let her hit me back 10 times harder. And don't get me wrong, I loved my parents, but I know they saw my bruises, my cuts. I know they could hear me crying in pain late at night, but they never did anything, because they were unfortunately extremely passive, and in their eyes it was okay because she was a girl hitting a boy, not the other way around. Plus, when we all hung out as a family, she had the caring big sister role down to a T. Whenever we crossed the road, she would gently extend her arm to stop me crossing too soon. She'd always run ahead of us and make sure to hold open every door for the family and for strangers. It was sickening. But one good thing did come out of it, my muscles. You see, I let all of the resentment she caused to force me to lift heavier at the gym. So by 16, not only was I on the varsity football team, but I was also jacked. And she was in the grade ahead of me, a junior, so I was constantly hearing about the gossip in her class. At this point, she had stopped hitting me, simply because I was too big, and all I wanted was to have a good relationship with her. So when I heard that she was dating the light-skinned demon Malik in her grade, I made sure to keep a close eye on him. He seemed nice at first, but they always do. It wasn't even 3 weeks into their relationship when he cheated on her with her best friend. I was literally in the same room as her when she found out. Malik had sent her a video on Snapchat of him doing backshots with her best friend. I ignored her crying and followed his Snap Map location. She confirmed it was his address and asked if she could sit in the car and watch. I smirked, because that dude was lanky as heck. I knew his brains were about to be minced meat on the sidewalk, and I was right. When we got there, she knocked on the door, because there was no way Malik would open if he saw me. As soon as her best friend opened up, I pushed past her and found Malik leaning against the wall in the hallway. I didn't want to go to jail, so I just hit him until he finally said the words, "Vanessa is my queen," my sister's name, and we left. On the car ride home, I almost crashed, because Vanessa kept replaying the video, and I was laughing my A off. At that moment, I knew our relationship had been rebuilt, or so I thought, because as it turns out, the only relationship that was rebuilt was the one with Malik. They got back together a week later. When I asked Vanessa what the F she was doing, she told me everyone deserves a second chance. Plus, she wanted to make her ex-best friend jealous. I told her that if he did anything this time I wouldn't get involved, and she ended up sulking for the rest of the evening. Whatever. But 2 days later, when our parents weren't home, I heard a knock on the door. It was Vanessa. I opened up, and suddenly, 2 light-skins I didn't recognize were wailing on me. Red was pouring out of my head, and they only stopped when they heard a car pulling up in the driveway. It was my dad. "Oh my gosh, what happened?" Vanessa yelled as soon as my dad walked in, pretending like she hadn't been home, like she hadn't orchestrated the whole thing. My dad's face went ghost white. I ended up in the hospital with a concussion, a fractured rib, and a dislocated shoulder. As soon as Vanessa left to go to the bathroom, I told my dad what had happened as quickly as I could. "Son, your sister would never do that. She loves you." "Dad, please! She's been hitting me since I was a child. These bruises are all from Vanessa." By this point, tears were streaming down my face. I didn't even want Vanessa to be punished. I just wanted him to believe me. Instead, he put his hand on my shoulder and told me to get some rest. A few hours later, I woke up to my uncle sitting beside me. After getting the "how are you feeling" conversation out of the way, he leaned in really close and began to whisper, "Your father believes you. We all do." Confusion flooded my body. Turns out, the whole thing had opened up the conversation about her past treatment of me, and my dad was finally ready to break the no-hitting women rule. Miss Patel, the CPS worker who was in my home, led me to the living room, her expression unreadable as she opened a manila folder. The folder was thick with papers, and I wondered how much she already knew about our family. I glanced back toward the stairs, but Vanessa had disappeared. The living room felt smaller than usual, the familiar family photos on the walls now seeming like they belonged to strangers. "I understand this might be difficult," Ms. Patel began, her voice gentle but firm, "but I need to ask you some questions about your home life." My heart hammered against my fractured rib, each hit sending a sharp pain through my chest. The couch cushion felt too soft beneath me, making me sink uncomfortably as I tried to sit up straight. "What exactly did my sister tell you?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. My fingers picked nervously at a loose thread on my jeans as I waited for her answer. Miss Patel's eyebrow raised slightly, her dark eyes studying me. "I'd prefer to hear your perspective first, without assumptions about what anyone else has said." She clicked her pen, poised to take notes on her official-looking clipboard. I took a deep breath, wincing at the pain that shot through my side. "Where should I start?" The air conditioning hummed softly in the background, a steady counterpoint to my racing thoughts. Why don't we begin with these injuries? She gestured to my arm in its sling, the bruises visible beneath my t-shirt sleeve. The purple marks stood out starkly against my skin, a colorful map of my sister's rage. For the next hour, I told her everything. The years of abuse, the hospital visit, the videos my parents had found on Vanessa's phone showing her laughing about setting me up. I showed her the healing bruises, the medical reports. My voice grew hoarse from talking, and occasionally I had to pause to collect myself. Ms. Patel took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just listening, her pen scratching quietly against her notepad. The sound was oddly comforting, proof that someone was finally paying attention. Your sister claims your mother struck her, Ms. Patel finally said, looking up from her notes. Is that true? Her tone was neutral, but I could sense she was watching my reaction carefully. I nodded slowly, remembering the incident with perfect clarity. The kitchen had been filled with the smell of dinner cooking, steam rising from pots on the stove. After years of Vanessa abusing me, then turning on our mom. Yeah, Mom finally snapped and slapped her. Once, after Vanessa shoved her into a counter. The memory was vivid. The sound of my mother's back hitting the edge of the counter. The look of shock on both their faces afterward. Ms. Patel wrote something down, her expression neutral. And you've been staying with your uncle? Her pen hovered over the paper, waiting for my response. I just moved back yesterday. The words felt strange in my mouth, foreign somehow. My bedroom still didn't feel like mine again. My things arranged too neatly, too differently from how I'd left them. Do you feel safe here now? The question hung in the air between us. Did I? The house was the same furniture, same pictures on the walls, same creaky third step on the staircase, but everything felt different. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the front door. My dad answered it, his voice carrying down the hallway. Travis, he said with obvious relief. Come in. The sound of the door closing was followed by heavy footsteps in the hallway. Uncle Travis stepped into the living room, nodding at Ms. Patel. I came as soon as I got your message, Brandon. He turned to Ms. Patel. I'm the boy's uncle. He's been living with me while recovering. His presence filled the room, solid and reassuring like always. Ms. Patel seemed pleased by his arrival. Perhaps you could provide some additional context, Mr. She flipped to a fresh page in her notepad. Travis Horvat, and I've got plenty to share. Uncle Travis sat beside me, his presence steadying. The couch shifted under his weight, and the familiar smell of his aftershave, pine and something spicy, was comforting. He corroborated everything I'd said, adding details about my parents' growing awareness and Vanessa's escalating behavior. His deep voice remained calm and measured, even when describing the worst incidents. I've got text messages from my brother and sister-in-law documenting Vanessa's outbursts, he said, pulling out his phone, and photos of the damage to their home. The screen glowed as he scrolled through image after image, each one worse than the last. Ms. Patel reviewed the evidence, her professional demeanor cracking slightly as she scrolled through images of broken dishes, holes punched in walls, and my mother's bruised arms. This is extensive, she murmured. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen, pausing occasionally on particularly disturbing photos. From upstairs came the sound of a door slamming. The noise echoed through the house, making me flinch instinctively. Vanessa appeared at the bottom of the stairs, face flushed with anger. Her hair was wild, as if she'd been running her hands through it, and her eyes were bright with fury. You're all lying, she shouted, her voice echoing through the house. They've been abusing me! That's why I had to defend myself! Spittle flew from her mouth as she yelled, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. Ms. Patel stood up, her stance shifting subtly. Miss Horvat, I'll speak with you separately. Her voice was firm but calm, a stark contrast to Vanessa's rage. No, they're turning you against me. Vanessa's eyes locked on mine, filled with such hatred it made me flinch. The intensity of her glare made my stomach clench. He's always been the favorite. They let him get away with everything while punishing me. Her voice cracked on the last word, raw with emotion. Dad stepped forward, his voice low and warning. Vanessa, that's enough. He raised his hand in a placating gesture, but it only seemed to enrage her further. You shut up, she screamed, grabbing a framed photo from the wall and hurling it at him. The frame spun through the air like a deadly frisbee. Dad ducked, and the frame shattered against the wall, glass tinkling across the hardwood floor. The sound of breaking glass seemed to hang in the air, a crystalline punctuation to her outburst. Ms. Patel's eyes widened. She quickly stepped between Vanessa and the rest of us. Miss Horvat, I need you to calm down immediately. Her voice was authoritative now, all traces of gentleness gone. Vanessa froze, suddenly seeming to remember why Miss Patel was here. Her expression shifted instantly, tears welling up as she hugged herself. Her shoulders hunched forward, making her look smaller and more vulnerable. See how they make me feel? I'm so scared all the time. Her voice had transformed into a trembling whisper. The performance was impressive. For a moment, I almost believed her myself. The tears that spilled down her cheeks looked genuine, and the way her lower lip quivered was convincing. Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time, Ms. Patel said carefully. I'd like to speak with each family member individually. She began gathering her papers, sliding them back into the manila folder with efficient movements. As she gathered her things, Uncle Travis pulled out his phone. Actually, there's something else you should see. He pressed play on a video. The tinny sound of shouting filled the room as the screen showed Vanessa in our kitchen, screaming at our mother, shoving her hard against the counter. Mom raised her hands defensively, backing away until she couldn't go further. When Vanessa lunged again, Mom's hand came up reflexively, connecting with Vanessa's cheek. The slap wasn't hard, but the sound was sharp in the quiet kitchen. Vanessa's face drained of color as she watched. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. Her eyes were wide with shock, all pretense of vulnerability gone. "Security camera," Dad said quietly. "I installed them after your brother went to the hospital, to keep everyone safe." His voice was sad, rather than triumphant, as if this confirmation of his daughter's behavior brought him no joy. Ms. Patel's expression hardened as she watched the video play out. "I think I've seen enough for today." She snapped her folder closed with finality. Before leaving, she pulled me aside. "We'll be investigating thoroughly. In the meantime, do you have somewhere safe you can stay?" Her eyes were kind but serious, and I could tell she was genuinely concerned. I glanced at Uncle Travis, who nodded. "Yeah, I do." The relief in her expression was evident. That night, I packed my bags again. The familiar routine of folding clothes and gathering toiletries was becoming too common. Vanessa locked herself in her room, refusing to come out even for dinner. The house was eerily quiet as I moved between my room and the bathroom, collecting my things. As Uncle Travis loaded my stuff into his truck, Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking, "for everything." Her arms around me felt both comforting and strange. When was the last time she'd hugged me like this? "It's not your fault," I told her, though part of me still wondered why they hadn't seen the truth sooner. Why it had taken a hospital visit and CPS involvement for them to finally believe me. Dad clasped my shoulder, his eyes red-rimmed. "We're going to fix this. All of it." His hand was warm and heavy, his grip firm with new resolve. As we drove away, I watched my house disappear in the side mirror. The porch light glowed softly in the gathering dusk, making the place look deceptively peaceful. "What happens now?" The truck's engine rumbled beneath us, vibrating through the seat. Uncle Travis sighed, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "CPS will complete their investigation. Your parents are requesting family therapy, and they're looking into residential treatment options for Vanessa." The dashboard lights illuminated his face in a soft blue glow, highlighting the worry lines around his eyes. Residential treatment? Like sending her away? The idea seemed both relieving and somehow sad. It might be what she needs. Professional help in a controlled environment. His voice was gentle but firm, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I stared out the window, conflicted. Despite everything, I didn't hate Vanessa. I just wanted the abuse to stop. Streetlights flashed by in rhythmic intervals, casting momentary shadows across my face. The next few days passed in a blur of CPS interviews and doctor appointments. I returned to school, trying to focus on classes and football despite the chaos. The familiar hallways and classrooms were a welcome distraction, though I noticed people staring and whispering when I walked by. Coach Madison was understanding, easing me back into practice gradually. The smell of fresh-cut grass and the sound of cleats on turf were comfortingly normal. "Family stuff, huh?" he asked, after noticing my distraction during drills. His weathered face was kind beneath his baseball cap, his eyes squinting in the afternoon sun. "Yeah, it's complicated." I adjusted my helmet, avoiding his gaze. He nodded, his weathered face softening. "Family always is. Just remember, you've got another family right here." He gestured to the team running plays on the field. The guys were sweaty and grass-stained, shouting and laughing as they practiced. That support meant everything. When rumors started circulating about why I'd missed so much school, my teammates had my back. They didn't know the details, but they made it clear that anyone giving me trouble would answer to them. Their solidarity was a shield against the curious stares and whispered questions. A week after Ms. Patel's visit, Uncle Travis got a call from my dad. Vanessa had run away. The news hit me during dinner, making me drop my fork with a clatter against the plate. "What do you mean, run away?" I asked when he told me. "Where would she go?" My mind raced through possibilities. Friends' houses, boyfriends, distant relatives. "Your dad thinks she might be with Malik." He frowned, concern etching lines around his mouth. I snorted. After he gave her STDs and cheated on her? No way. The idea seemed ridiculous. But then again, Vanessa had never been predictable. But Dad was right. Police found Vanessa at Malik's apartment 2 days later. According to my parents, she refused to come home, screaming that we were all against her. The officers couldn't force her to return since she was 17, old enough in our state to decide where she wanted to live. The legal technicality felt like a slap in the face after everything we'd been through. "She's made her choice," Dad told me over the phone, sounding exhausted. "We told her she's welcome home if she agrees to therapy and following house rules." I could picture him sitting at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, rubbing his forehead the way he did when stressed. "And if she doesn't?" The question hung in the air between us. His sigh said everything. The static of the phone line filled the silence, neither of us knowing what to say next. Life settled into a new routine. I split my time between Uncle Travis's apartment and my parents' house, gradually spending more nights at home as it became clear Vanessa wasn't coming back. The transition was awkward at first. My room felt both familiar and strange, and meals with just the three of us were quieter than before. My injuries healed. Football season ended, the holidays approached. The days grew shorter and colder, and Christmas decorations began appearing in windows and yards. Then, 3 weeks before Christmas, Vanessa showed up at school. I was at my locker between classes when I felt someone staring at me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and the noisy hallway suddenly seemed too quiet. I turned to find her standing there, looking thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes hung loosely on her frame, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Hey, she said, voice barely audible above the hallway noise. Students pushed past us, oblivious to the tension between us. I tensed, glancing around for potential threats. Was this another setup? My eyes scanned the crowded hallway, looking for unfamiliar faces or anyone watching us too closely. What do you want? My voice came out harsher than intended. Can we talk? Just for a minute? She hugged her books to her chest like a shield. Against my better judgment, I followed her to an empty classroom. The room smelled of chalk dust and teenage sweat, desks arranged in neat rows facing the whiteboard. I left the door open, positioning myself near the exit. Vanessa noticed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her face. You think I'm going to attack you or something? Her attempt at a joke fell flat, her smile not reaching her eyes. Wouldn't be the first time. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. She flinched. I guess I deserve that. Her fingers traced invisible patterns on the desktop beside her. We stood in awkward silence until she finally spoke again. Malik kicked me out, she said. He got back with Jasmine for real this time. The admission seemed to cost her, her pride visibly wounded. I didn't know what to say. I told you so seemed too cruel, even after everything. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence between us. I've been staying with different friends, but she trailed off, looking down at her worn sneakers. I want to come home. The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. That's between you and Mom and Dad. I shifted my weight, uncomfortable with her sudden openness. They said I have to go to therapy and some residential program after New Year's. Her voice hardened. It's bullshit. I don't need to be locked up. The brief moment of vulnerability was gone, replaced by her familiar defensiveness. It's not prison, Vanessa. It's treatment. I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve, avoiding her eyes. Whatever. She crossed her arms. They also said I need to apologize to you. South. Sorry, I guess. The words came out flat and insincere. The half-hearted apology made something snap inside me. You guess? After years of beating me up? After sending those guys to put me in the hospital? That's the best you can do? Heat rose in my face as years of suppressed anger bubbled to the surface. Vanessa's eyes flashed. You want me to grovel? Fine. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I was jealous that everyone always loved you more. I'm sorry I'm so fucked up that I don't know how to deal with my feelings except by hitting something. Her outburst left me speechless. For the first time, I glimpsed something real beneath her anger. Pain, confusion, insecurity. Her chest heaved with emotion, and for a moment, she looked younger, more vulnerable. I never wanted them to love me more, I said quietly. The anger drained from me, leaving only a hollow sadness. Well, they did. They do. She wiped angrily at her eyes. And now they're sending me away because they don't want to deal with me anymore. A tear escaped despite her efforts, tracing a path down her cheek. That's not true. They want to help you. I took a step toward her, then stopped, unsure. She laughed bitterly. Right, help me by getting rid of me. The bell rang, signaling the start of next period. Students began filling the hallway outside, their voices and footsteps creating a wall of sound. Just think about what I said, Vanessa muttered, pushing past me toward the door. Tell Mom and Dad I'll do their stupid therapy if it means I can come home for Christmas. Her shoulder brushed mine as she passed, and I caught a whiff of her familiar perfume, vanilla and something floral. That evening, I told my parents about the encounter. They exchanged worried glances across the kitchen table. Steam rose from our dinner plates, fogging the glasses of water beside them. We've been trying to reach her for days, Mom said, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. Her phone's been off. The overhead light caught the silver band, making it glint as she turned it. Do you think she means it? I asked. About therapy? I pushed my peas around my plate, appetite gone. Dad ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. We've heard promises before. Deep lines creased his forehead, making him look older than his years. The residential program has a good reputation, Mom added. 3 months minimum. They specialize in anger management and trauma. She spoke quickly, as if trying to convince herself as much as me. I picked at my dinner, pushing pasta around my plate. She thinks you're sending her away because you don't want her anymore. The words hung heavy in the air between us. Mom's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. We love her. We just don't know how to help her ourselves. A tear spilled over, tracking down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly with her napkin. The next day, Vanessa texted me, "Can you pick me up after school? Need to get some stuff from home." The message appeared during history class, making my phone vibrate against my leg. I read it under my desk, my heart rate picking up. I showed the message to Uncle Travis, who frowned. I don't like it. Could be another setup. He was making dinner when I got home, the kitchen filled with the smell of sautéed onions and garlic. I don't think so, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. She seemed different yesterday. I leaned against the counter, watching him chop vegetables with practiced efficiency. Different how? The knife paused mid-chop as he looked up at me. I don't know. Defeated, maybe? I shrugged, unable to articulate the change I'd sensed in her. Uncle Travis considered this. I'll come with you, just in case. He set down the knife and wiped his hands on a dish towel. Decision made. We waited in the school parking lot that afternoon. The car heater blasted warm air against the December chill, fogging the windows slightly. Vanessa emerged from the building alone, looking surprised to see Uncle Travis in the passenger seat. Her breath formed small clouds in the cold air as she approached. What's he doing here? she asked as she climbed into the back. Her backpack landed with a thud on the seat beside her. Moral support, I replied, pulling out of the parking space. The tires crunched on the salt-covered asphalt as we merged into the line of cars leaving the school. The drive home was silent. When we arrived, Vanessa headed straight upstairs while Uncle Travis and I waited in the kitchen. I could hear her moving around in her room, drawers opening and closing. The house felt strange with her in it again, tense, as if holding its breath. 20 minutes later, she came down with a duffel bag. I just need some clothes and stuff. I'm staying at Skylar's house tonight. The bag looked stuffed to capacity, bulging at the seams. Your parents know you're here? Uncle Travis asked. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed but stance relaxed. Vanessa rolled her eyes. I texted Mom. She's at work. She shifted the heavy bag to her other shoulder, keys jingling in her pocket. As she turned to leave, I noticed something fall from her bag, a small orange prescription bottle. It hit the tile floor with a plastic rattle, rolling toward me. I picked it up before she could grab it. What's this? I asked, reading the label. The name on the bottle wasn't hers. These are Dad's pain meds from his back surgery. My stomach dropped as I realized what she was doing. Vanessa lunged for the bottle. Give it back! It's not what you think. Her face flushed red, panic replacing her usual confidence. Uncle Travis stepped between us. Then what is it, Vanessa? His voice was calm, but firm, a tone that brooked no argument. Her face crumpled. I need something to help me sleep. I have nightmares. The admission seemed to cost her, her shoulders slumping in defeat. These aren't sleeping pills, I said, and they're not yours to take. I pocketed the bottle, keeping it safely away from her. Fine, keep them, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. You've taken everything else from me anyway. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The house seemed to shake with the force of it. Through the window, I watched her walk down the street, shoulders hunched, wiping furiously at her face. The winter sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the snow-dusted lawn. That night, I couldn't sleep. Vanessa's words kept replaying in my mind. You've taken everything else from me anyway. Had I? All I'd done was finally stand up for myself, tell the truth about years of abuse. Why did that make me the bad guy in her eyes? I stared at the ceiling, watching headlights occasionally sweep across it as cars passed outside. The next morning, Mom called. Vanessa had come home late last night, asking to talk. They'd stayed up for hours, and for the first time, Vanessa had opened up about her feelings, her jealousy, her anger, her fear of being abandoned. The kitchen table had become a confessional, tissues piling up as walls finally came down. She agreed to start therapy right away, Mom said, hope evident in her voice. Not just the residential program, but sessions with Dr. Bailey starting tomorrow. I could hear the cautious optimism in her voice, tempered by years of disappointment. That's good, I said cautiously. Do you believe her? I sat on the edge of Uncle Travis's guest bed, feet cold against the hardwood floor. I want to. She seemed sincere. There was a pause, filled with unspoken doubt. This time felt different. I wanted to believe it too, but experience had taught me to be wary of Vanessa's sudden changes of heart. The prescription bottle sat on my nightstand, a reminder of how far she'd gone. Over the next week, Vanessa attended 3 therapy sessions with Dr. Bailey. According to my parents, she was participating, even doing the homework assignments Dr. Bailey gave her. She stayed home every night, helped with chores without being asked, and didn't have a single outburst. The house was peaceful, in a way it hadn't been for years. It's like she's a different person, Dad told me when he came to pick me up for dinner at their house. The first family dinner since everything had happened. His eyes looked clearer, the constant worry lines around them less pronounced. I was nervous as we pulled into the driveway. You're sure this is a good idea? The house looked the same as always, but it felt different knowing Vanessa was inside. Dr. Bailey thinks it's important for healing, Dad said, but if you're uncomfortable, we can do this another time. He turned off the engine but didn't move to get out, waiting for my decision. I shook my head. No, it's fine. I want things to get better. And I did, despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Inside, Mom was setting the table while Vanessa helped in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The familiar domestic scene was surreal after everything that had happened. She looked up when we entered, offering a small, tentative smile. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore a simple sweater instead of her usual all-black ensemble. Hey, she said softly. The wooden spoon in her hand dripped sauce onto the stovetop. Hey, I replied, equally cautious. The air between us felt charged, filled with unspoken words. Dinner was awkward, but civil. We stuck to safe topics. School, the upcoming holidays, Uncle Travis's new girlfriend. No one mentioned therapy or CPS or the past. The clinking of silverware filled the silences between conversation. After dinner, as Dad and I cleared the table, Vanessa approached me. Can we talk? In private? Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I glanced at Dad, who nodded encouragingly. Sure, I said, following her to the living room. My guard was still up, but curiosity won out. Vanessa sat on the couch, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. Dr. Bailey says I need to make amends, not just apologize, but acknowledge what I did wrong and how it affected you. She twisted the fabric between her fingers, not meeting my eyes. I sat across from her, waiting. The coffee table between us felt like both a barrier and a safety zone. I was awful to you, she continued, voice shaking. For years, I hit you. I humiliated you. I sent those guys to hurt you, and I lied about all of it. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I understand now how wrong it was, and I'm trying to change. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. This felt real. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? The question had haunted me for years. She took a deep breath. Doctor, Bailey's helping me figure that out. Part of it was jealousy. You were always so good at everything. School, sports, making friends. People liked you instantly. She twisted her sleeve tighter, and I felt like I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. The admission seemed to cost her. Each word dragged reluctantly from some deep place. That's not true, I started to protest. It felt true to me, she interrupted. And instead of dealing with those feelings, I took them out on you, because you were there, and because I could. Her voice broke on the last words, raw with emotion. We talked for nearly an hour, really talked, maybe for the first time ever, about our childhood, our parents, our insecurities. It wasn't magical. Years of hurt couldn't be erased in one conversation, but it felt like a genuine step forward. The wall between us didn't come down entirely, but a small window opened. As Christmas approached, Vanessa continued therapy. I gradually spent more time at home, though I still kept my guard up. The residential program was scheduled to start January 2nd. Vanessa seemed resigned to it, even admitting it might help. The house began to feel like home again, decorated with familiar ornaments and filled with the smell of Mom's holiday baking. Then, 2 days before Christmas, everything fell apart again. I came home from last-minute shopping to find police cars in our driveway. Red and blue lights flashed against the darkening sky, illuminating the snow in eerie pulses. My heart raced as I ran inside, finding Mom sobbing on the couch while an officer took notes. The shopping bags in my hands suddenly felt ridiculous and heavy. What happened? I demanded. Where's Dad? Where's Vanessa? Panic made my voice sharp. Mom looked up, face streaked with tears. Your father's at the hospital. Vanessa. She took his car. She was drinking. There was an accident. Each sentence came out between sobs, her hands shaking as she clutched a tissue. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Is she okay? Is Dad okay? The room felt too hot, too small, the Christmas tree lights blurring as my eyes struggled to focus. Your father's fine, just some cuts from pulling her out, the officer explained. Your sister's in surgery. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. His voice was professional but kind, clearly used to delivering bad news. The next hours passed in a blur. Uncle Travis drove us to the hospital, where we found Dad in the waiting room, bandages on his hands and face. The antiseptic smell of the hospital mixed with the metallic scent of blood that still clung to his clothes. I was following her, he explained, voice hollow. I saw her take my keys. She was upset about something, wouldn't tell me what. I followed in your mother's car, but I couldn't catch up before. He trailed off, staring at his bandaged hands. The white gauze was spotted with red in places. We waited for hours, jumping every time a doctor appeared. The waiting room clock ticked loudly, each minute stretching endlessly. Finally, a surgeon approached, still in scrubs. Blood speckled the blue fabric, and his mask hung around his neck. She's stabilized, he told us. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, concussion, but she's young and strong. With time and physical therapy, she should recover. The relief was overwhelming. Despite everything, the thought of losing Vanessa had been unbearable. They let us see her briefly in recovery. She looked small and broken among the tubes and monitors, nothing like the force of nature that had terrorized me for years. Her face was swollen and bruised, one arm in a cast, her breathing assisted by a machine. I stood at the foot of her bed, watching her breathe, feeling an odd mixture of anger and compassion. As we left the ICU, a police officer approached. Mr. and Mrs. Horvat, we found these in your daughter's possession. He handed Dad a plastic evidence bag containing several med bottles, including the one I'd caught Vanessa trying to take. The orange containers looked garish under the fluorescent hospital lights. She had alcohol and prescription substances in her system, the officer continued. Once she's recovered, she'll likely face charges for DUI, theft of prescription medication, and driving without a license. His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were sympathetic. Mom gasped. Charges? But she needs help, not punishment. Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby nurses. That will be up to the court to decide, ma'am. As the officer walked away, Dad turned to me. Did you know about the pills? His eyes were tired, the skin around them bruised with exhaustion. I nodded reluctantly. I caught her trying to take yours last week. Uncle Travis said he told you. Guilt gnawed at me, though I knew this wasn't my fault. He did. We thought we'd found them all. Dad closed his eyes briefly. The doctor said she's been abusing prescription meds for months. That explains a lot. The revelation cast Vanessa's behavior in a new light. The mood swings, the aggression, the periods of seeming improvement followed by dramatic backslides. How much had been her, and how much had been the substances. Christmas came and went in the hospital waiting room. The staff had put up a small tree at the nurses' station, its cheerful lights at odds with the somber atmosphere. Vanessa remained sedated for days, her body too traumatized to handle consciousness. When she finally woke on December 27th, she was confused, in pain, and facing a future more complicated than ever. I visited her alone the next day. She was propped up in bed, her right leg in a cast, bandages covering much of her visible skin. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and the occasional squeak of rubber-soled shoes in the hallway. She looked away when I entered. Hey, I said, setting a small gift bag on her bedside table. Belated Christmas present. The paper rustled as I set it down. She glanced at it suspiciously. Why would you get me anything? Her voice was raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed yesterday. Because you're my sister. I sat in the visitor's chair. And because I thought you might need something to keep you busy in here. The vinyl chair squeaked as I settled into it. Curiosity won out. She reached for the bag, wincing at the movement, and pulled out a sketchbook and set of drawing pencils. The fresh paper made a satisfying sound as she flipped through the blank pages. You used to draw all the time, time when we were kids, I explained. Remember those comics you made about the superhero family? The memory was from before things went bad, when we were still just siblings who occasionally fought, but mostly got along. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. The Incredibles totally ripped me off. For a moment, she looked like the sister I remembered from childhood. We sat in companionable silence for a while. Finally, Vanessa spoke. I really messed up, didn't I? Her fingers traced the edge of the sketchbook, following the spiral binding. Yeah, I agreed. But you're still here. That's something. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across her hospital bed. She picked at the edge of her blanket. They're sending me to rehab after I get out of here. Then probably to that residential program, if I don't go to juvie instead. Her voice was flat, resigned. One day at a time, I said. Focus on getting better first. It was something Uncle Travis often said, and it felt right in this moment. She looked up at me, eyes shining with tears. Why are you being nice to me? After everything I did? A tear spilled over, tracking down her bruised cheek. I considered the question carefully, because holding on to anger just makes me more like you were, and I don't want to be that person. The truth of it settled in my chest, solid and real. Vanessa nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. I don't want to be that person either. Her voice was quiet, but determined. As I left the hospital that day, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not naive optimism that everything would magically be fixed, but genuine hope that healing was possible. For Vanessa, for my parents, for me. The winter air was crisp and cold, filling my lungs with each breath. The road ahead would be long and difficult. There would be setbacks, relapses, hard days when old patterns threatened to reemerge, but I believed we might actually make it through. Not back to what we were before, but forward to something new and better. Uncle Travis was waiting in the parking lot. How'd it go? He leaned against his truck, breath fogging in the cold air. I took a deep breath of the cold winter air. It went okay. I think we're going to be okay. The words felt true as I said them. Uncle Travis nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. One day at a time, kid. He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand warm and solid. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits and legal meetings. Vanessa's physical recovery was slow but steady. The emotional stuff was more complicated. I split my time between school, football training, and visiting Vanessa. Sometimes we'd talk. Other times I'd just sit with her while she sketched in the book I'd given her. The drawings started out dark and chaotic, jagged lines and shadowy figures. But as the weeks passed, they gradually became more structured, even peaceful. Dr. Bailey says art therapy helps process trauma, she told me one afternoon, shading in a surprisingly detailed portrait of our family. She'd drawn us all together on the front porch. Mom, Dad, her, and me. Not as we were now, but as we could be someday. The pencil made soft scratching sounds against the paper as she worked. January faded into February. Vanessa was released from the hospital but went straight to an inpatient rehab facility. The judge had been surprisingly lenient, given the circumstances, mandatory rehabilitation and therapy instead of juvenile detention, with the understanding that she'd complete the residential treatment program afterward. You got lucky, I told her during my first visit to the rehab center. The facility was nicer than I'd expected, more like a college dorm than a hospital. I know, she said quietly. Dad's lawyer really came through. She looked healthier already, the haunted look in her eyes beginning to fade. Meanwhile, things at home were changing too. Mom and Dad started marriage counseling, admitting that years of ignoring Vanessa's behavior had damaged their relationship. They'd grown accustomed to walking on eggshells, to pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. We should have protected you, Mom told me one evening, her eyes welling up. I'll never forgive myself for that. We were sitting at the kitchen table, mugs of hot chocolate between us. I'm okay now, I assured her, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. The scars, both physical and emotional, would always be there. By March, I was spending most nights at home again. My room felt like mine once more, a safe space rather than just a place to sleep. I'd taken down some of my old posters and put up new ones. Small changes, but important ones. The spring air carried the scent of new beginnings through my open window. Vanessa completed her rehab program in early April, just as spring was breathing life back into the world. The plan was for her to come home for 2 weeks before starting the residential treatment program, a trial run to see how we'd all adjust to being under the same roof again. The day she came home, I was a nervous wreck. I kept checking my phone during classes, half expecting catastrophic updates from Mom, but the only text I got was, "Vanessa's home. She's resting. See you after practice." The simple message was both reassuring and anxiety-inducing. When I walked through the front door that afternoon, the house was quiet, too quiet. The familiar sounds and smells were there, Mom's favorite candle burning in the living room, the hum of the refrigerator, but something felt different. "Mom?" I called, dropping my backpack by the stairs. "Dad?" My voice echoed slightly in the entryway. "In the kitchen," Mom replied. Her voice sounded normal, which was somehow more surprising than if she'd sounded stressed. I found them sitting at the table with Vanessa, playing Uno of all things. The colorful cards were spread across the table, and Dad was laughing at something Mom had said. They looked up when I entered, and for a second, no one spoke. The moment hung suspended, fragile as glass. Vanessa looked different, healthier. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore a simple t-shirt and jeans instead of her usual all-black ensemble. The physical changes were obvious. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, and the dark circles under her eyes had faded. But there was something else too, a calmness that hadn't been there before. The constant tension in her shoulders had eased, and her eyes were clear. On the fourth night, I woke to the sound of crying, soft, muffled sobs coming from Vanessa's room. The digital clock on my nightstand read 2:17 a.m., its red numbers casting a faint glow across my bedroom. I lay in bed, listening, unsure what to do. The old me would have stayed put, too afraid of provoking her to offer comfort. But things were different now. I got up and padded down the hall, stopping outside her door. The wooden floor was cool beneath my bare feet. The crying continued. I knocked gently. "Vanessa, you okay?" My voice sounded loud in the quiet house. The crying stopped abruptly. After a moment, she called out, "I'm fine." Her voice was thick with tears despite her claim. I could have left it at that. Part of me wanted to. But instead I said, "Can I come in?" My hand rested on the doorknob, waiting. A pause, then, "If you want." The words were soft, uncertain. I opened the door to find her sitting cross-legged on her bed, hastily wiping her eyes. Her sketchbook lay open beside her, pages flipped to a drawing of two children, a boy and a girl, holding hands. The nightlight in the corner cast a soft glow across the room, making shadows dance on the walls. "Bad dream?" I asked, hovering in the doorway. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I shifted my weight. She nodded. "About the accident. I keep seeing Dad's face when he pulled me out of the car. He looked so scared." Her fingers twisted in the blanket, knuckles white with tension. I moved into the room, sitting cautiously on the edge of her bed. The mattress dipped slightly under my weight. He was. We all were. The memory of that night was still vivid. The police lights, Mom's tears, the endless hospital waiting room. "I didn't mean to drive into that tree," she said quietly. "I was just so angry, and the pills made everything fuzzy, and I couldn't see straight, and..." Her words tumbled out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for weeks. "I know," I cut her off gently. "No one thinks you crashed on purpose." I reached out hesitantly, then let my hand rest on her shoulder. She didn't flinch away. She picked at a loose thread on her blanket. "Doctor," Bailey says, "I need to make peace with my mistakes. That I can't change the past, but I can choose what I do next." The thread came loose in her fingers, and she wound it around her index finger absently. Sounds like good advice. The night was quiet around us, the house settling with occasional creaks and sighs. "Yeah." She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I'm trying. It's just hard sometimes." A car passed outside, its headlights briefly illuminating the room through the curtains. I nodded, understanding completely. "I know, but you're not doing it alone anymore." And for the first time in years, I truly believed that we might be okay. Not perfect, not unchanged, but okay. The road ahead would be long, but at least now we were all walking it together.